new European-wide central bank, and they will effectively have this European-wide government that was not elected, that they put together themselves, that'll be running Europe, and you've got one step removed then from the same thing happening in North America and Asia as we head toward the New World Order, as you put it. But this is the penultimate step toward New World Order. It happened this week with France and Germany agreeing or talking about having a dual governance system and combining their economies in a way that's completely outside of any election or a referendum by any of the underlying citizens.
And again, by penultimate, next to the paramount. So the next level. In fact, we say that in Obama Deception and Fall of the Republic. We describe how they would create global crises and currencies, implode each region, set up banking dictatorships over those, which will then merge into the Bank of the World, which the Financial Times, Time Magazine, Newsweek are all pushing as a solution. Hey, you know those big secretive bankers that did all this? They've got a solution. They're going to rule everything now. Doesn't that sound great? We're going to come back and continue with where this will lead on the other side with Max Keiser. And then we're going to take some of your phone calls on the other side. But yes, there's the Daily Mail headline. Welcome to the Fourth Reich. And it's all out of crises. Rise of the Fourth Reich, how Germany is using the financial crisis to conquer Europe. Stay with us. Hundreds of nations have fallen to tyranny in the last century alone. This is our last chance to not relive history.
As we're finishing off this agenda, they'll be pulling the rug from underneath Americans at home.
Have tremendous influence on our president and Congress, and they really are calling the shots.
I think it's incumbent upon all of us as American citizens to pay attention.
Fall of the Republic identifies the enemies of our nation, the criminal offshore cartel, hell-bent on destroying sovereignty, and on its ashes constructing world government.
Tim Geithner, Bernanke, they're arsonists. They're asking for more matches. And the Congress is saying, who do we make the check out to?
Today, seems like nobody does care. And right now in Washington, D.C., we have seen a fall of the Republic.
Get your copy of Fall of the Republic on DVD at Infowars.com or watch it online right now in super high quality at prisonplanet.tv. Hi, folks. This is Alex Jones, and I want to tell you about the Silver Lungs Generator. Now you can produce pure and endless colloidal silver and deliver the solution directly into the bloodstream by breathing the solution through the lungs. The respiratory system is the first line of defense for airborne pathogens and viruses. The Silver Lungs Generator infuses the respiratory system with your self-produced nano-silver solutions and also delivers the silver nanoparticles instantly into the bloodstream. With continued legislation threatening the sale of nano-silver products, you can now produce pure and endless colloidal silver with the Silver Lungs Generator. Very easy to follow, step-by-step instructions are provided, making production fast and simple. Go to www.silverlungs.com today and learn more about the breakthrough technology of the Silver Lungs Generator. That's www.silverlungs.com. A very wealthy U.S. citizen is predicting that in 2011, we will witness the most important day in America in more than 50 years. He says it will change everything about our lives. The way you shop, travel, invest, educate your children, and even how you take care of your health and your own family. Now, this man has made some outrageous predictions over the years. The crazy part is, he's usually right. You see, he predicted the collapse of GM, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and America's biggest mall owner, General Growth Properties. In fact, Barron's called his work a dire prophecy. Recently, he created a video, which you can watch online for free, detailing his biggest and most important prediction yet. And it's a real eye-opener. I can't stress this enough. You should at least watch this free video online today. He explains everything you need to know, including simple steps you can take to protect yourself. You can find the video at www.endofamerica3.com. That's endofamerica, the number 3.com. Watch the free video at www.endofamerica3.com. That's endofamerica3.com.
He's the T-Rex of political talk. Alex Jones on the GCN Radio Network.
All right, if you just joined us, Max Keiser and I We're breaking down the heart of the matter. Then we're going to your phone calls. There's the Daily Mail. I saw just scores of other newspapers in Europe and the United States with the same headline. Rise of the Fourth Reich, how Germany is using the financial crisis to conquer Europe. But more than that, Germany's the biggest contributor to the, quote, bailouts, which are really consolidations. And there's been many founders of the EU that have bragged, we've quoted them in our film, saying the euro was set up by the banking cartels to bring countries into receivership. So to say that Germany itself is leading this new Reich, I don't really agree with that, or France either. The big mega banks are using the power of those countries' economics to dominate the others while transferring the power, as was reported yesterday, to a new super economic order. You can, in fact, search that term for folks. A new super economic order where the finance ministers, all revolving door employees of the big mega banks, literally run the countries. That's why they're saying now in Greece and other areas, their countries, their people don't run anything. Their parliaments run nothing, like a third world country that signed on to the IMF or World Bank. But again, most of this debt is not owed by the people. Depending on the estimates I've seen, on average, it's above 90% is actually derivatives that are fraudulent. What is the path here, Max Keiser? A, where will the establishment, the global banking occupation, as you dub it, what is their goal? What are they going to try to do versus what should we do to counter them?
Well, just to follow up on what we were saying in terms of the this new euro bond and global euro, universal euro bank, another part of the urgency to this is what's happening in the Swiss franc, because the Swiss franc is running away, in value against the dollar and the euro. It's up 40, 50%. And this is not helping Switzerland. It's hurting their export market. So as soon as they get this new euro bond off the ground, I am making this prediction. You will see a peg of the Swiss franc to this new euro this new euro bond banking, this new configuration.
Speak up for me, Max.
Yeah, you'll see a peg from the Swiss franc to this new. There's an urgency to it because the Swiss franc is running completely out of control on the upside, and it's hurting the Swiss, economy.
Well, that was my next point. They tried to devalue it, as you know, yesterday, and that made investors only rush in more and greedily buy it.
Yeah, they also outlawed short selling of bank stocks in Europe, and that did not stop the collapse today. That's very, very telling. It shows that the speculative frenzy to go after these banks and their inherent weakness is enormous, and that's why now the talk is that a French bank will go bankrupt, and it will require now a huge global response.
Now, Max, this sounds like a snake eating itself, because a lot of these big mega banks, this is the core of the globalist system, and yes, they're using the crisis to get even more power, but their own structure is being destroyed in the process. Have they bitten off more than they can chew? Were they irrationally exuberant themselves? Did they become delusional? Did they get delusions of grandeur? Could this be the end of these people?
Well, they're killing off the competition. So, for example, on Wall Street now, you got rid of Bear Stearns, you got rid of Lehman Brothers, you got rid of all the competition. So when they set up these big deals, like when they take Facebook public or Groupon public, which incidentally has been exposed as a massive Ponzi scheme, only one or two banks get that deal. Only one or two banks are trading on the inside stock transactions. So this is all about consolidation toward just having a few global players. And they're getting rid of the competition. This is extremely anti-competitive. That's the worst element of this of all. And that's the point that a leader like in the U.S. should be making first and foremost. Essentially, this is anti-competitive. The bailouts create too big to fail, which is the very definition of anti-competition. So that's their goal.
Which is too big to get in trouble. So you concur with my analysis. This has all been designed to consolidate things down to just a handful of mega banks and a few families. And in the aftermath, it'll destroy the economy. How do we beat these people? Just continue to point out the fraud, point out the Ponzi scheme. I have an article here in the Austin American-Statesman today with a little $75 million Ponzi scheme, former Triton CEO guilty in fraud case. And he did stuff, here they break down, that's mild compared to what J.P. Morgan Goldman Sachs is doing. I mean, that's what Madoff was right when he said, look, the whole stock market's a Ponzi scheme. I mean, at the end of the day, this Kurt Barton here in Austin and Bernie Madoff are only trying to do what the big boys are doing.
Yeah, absolutely, and they are trying to get down to the 2 or 3, only the biggest players. But you'd expect them to do that. That's what you expect happens in an economy. But that's why you need regulation, because even Adam Smith talked about this in Wealth of Nations in 1776. That book was published, and he said, the animal spirits, or the competitive spirits, need to be constantly and vigilantly monitored, because, as he put it, if you put 2 businessmen in a bar, they will collude. That's their nature. So you must be vigilant on the regulatory side. And this is something that for 20 years, all the regulations have been deregulated, and it was sold to us as a way to grow the economy. It did for a while grow the real estate market, and so people looked the other way until the real estate market collapsed, and people were left worse off than when they started. And now we're back to the fundamental question of, well, shouldn't these bankers be regulated? That's the fundamental question.
Yeah, they haven't even brought back Glass-Steagall that we got after the Depression. So here's the issue. They're not bringing the regulation back in. The public is waking up, though, and so it's 2 freight trains in collision course. If they continue these policies for another 2 years, as they've announced, giving themselves free money while blocking and the Federal Reserve paying banks not to lend to Main Street, what is going to happen?
Well, at this point, there is only really one solution, and that would go under the category of debt jubilee. These debts must simultaneously be scrubbed off the books. The bondholders must be paid the piper. They're going to take the massive losses.
That's what Ron Paul says we've got to do.
He's absolutely correct. And Jim Rickards, who's an excellent guy, you see him on TV often. I've interviewed him several times. He'll break it down for you as well. He's an excellent guest to consider for your show, Jim Rickards. He is of the same belief as well. And if you go throughout history, it's right there in the Bible. The Bible itself talked about having a jubilee every period of time to purge the system of all the bad debts. Yeah,
every 10 years. And again, these idiots that say, you've got to prop it up, we've got to fix the system. What's the magnitude? Because some say it's 100 times, some say 200 times the derivatives magnitude versus real assets. I mean, there's no paying off a black hole. The more solar systems you feed into it, the bigger it gets.
Well, the global GDP of the world is about 50 trillion, and the global derivative market is 600 trillion. So that's your ratio right there. It's over 10 to 1 of faulty, bad derivatives to the GDP of the country, of the world.
So you disagree with the analysis that it's 1.5 quadrillion?
Well, see, there's two numbers here. One is the market size, which is the actual buying and selling of derivatives, which is 1.5 quadrillion. Then there's the underlying value of the underlying securities themselves, which is approximately 600 trillion. Then some people will say, well, these are completely matched, therefore the liability is not that great, but that assumes that a counterparty like J.P. Morgan is solvent. And that's where people like myself and others point out that, wait a minute, you can't really assume that J.P. Morgan is solvent because they have 90 trillion of these bad debts on their books, and they're not solvent. Therefore, you must use that value of 600 trillion as the liability. You can't assume that these are going to be offset in some way. And the trading of these derivatives is over a quadrillion, and that's where the bankers make their fees. They trade these every single day. You know that there's over $4 trillion worth of Forex or, currency trades every single day. So the entire capitalization of America turns over, 14 trillion. That turns over every 3 or 4 days. The entire capitalization of America spins every week.
And they're all in there getting fees on selling zombie garbage back and forth.
They're buying and selling America every week for a fee, and the little businessman out there who's trying to scrape by selling widgets for a 50% markup is trying to compete. to make his $20,000, $30,000, $50,000 a year. He's competing with the bankers that are in the $1.5 trillion market where they're spinning his entire country.
And now the bankers are saying, raise the taxes to pay us more bailout money on the little guy on the street. It is just incredible. You know, I meant to get to Stan and Joe and Mark, and I really want to get to them, but we're just out of time. I apologize to the callers because I've got Dr. Bob Bowman coming up. And I can't do overdrive because I'm on TV today, but we'll see what happens before the call.